Boom. Praxis Sales Mastermind number 31. Super excited to have a pretty packed house today. This is going to be an excellent call full of excellent human beings. One thing I just wanted to open with, I've noticed there's a few trends or patterns within like my hiring of account executives for Toggle. What I notice is that most people are just like exceptionally average in how they choose to communicate. And if they're average in how they show up like before the first interview, they're almost always average on the interview. And if they accidentally make it past the first interview, then they just kind of reveal themselves as exceptionally average after the fact. So what I mean by that is like when most people are taking the test, Toggle requires you to take an online test to like answer various sales questions, see if you have the core competency. And one of the questions is like, so a VP of sales ghosts you after he says he's interested and you do a really successful demo with him. What do? Most people are like, I send him an email and ask what happened. And it's like, that's the exact opposite of what a good, competent, like motivated salesperson would do. A motivated salesperson, bare minimum, would like send a personalized video or like some kind of creative outreach by doing a Marcus Miller-esque approach where you find the local pub that he might go to and email him something in the subject line that's like a phrase from that local pub. Like they're going to do something creative. They're going to take a little bit of an extra step in investment. And like that bar, it's low, but most people never hurdle it. They just kind of show up and it's just, hey, like what happened? Did you leave because did something go wrong? Are there bugs I can help you with? It's like, no, I'm not going to respond to that because I'm the VP of operations. Go away, salesperson. So moving on from that, I noticed that basically there's a few traits that top performers consistently approach with. And the traits are something like this. They're not desperate, but they are proactive in their communication. So they're not like clingy, but they are like very straightforward, very direct. They show up with an energy that says, I value my time, without saying, hey, I value my time and I'm going to be very brief with you. So that's something that I look out for always. It's just kind of like a hallmark of confidence and competence. The second thing is brain farting. Give me a sec. Sometimes thoughts just fly away. I'll edit this part out. Thanks for your patience. I should probably pull up my LinkedIn post. All right. So basically, the second thing, Jesus Christ, I'm just going to pull it up because my brain is really farting right now. LinkedIn.com. This will be done in like 2 or 3 minutes. Hang on for me. Because I wrote about this. And this is what happens when you try winging things. It doesn't always work. Here we go. All right. So the second thing is they actually come prepared with the ability to pitch you on your company and they nail it the first try. So I do that cold call exercise in every single one of my interviews. Probably 80% of people fail. I even started telling people, hey, there's going to be a cold call exercise. You get to pick my industry and my title. So like, you know, look on the website and pick an industry and pick a title. No one's prepared for that. Everyone fails. And it's like exceedingly embarrassing, the fact that this is the state of the average salesperson and hiring process. You should come prepared to the interview by having done research, because you're showing up in a way that communicates, I don't research my prospects. I don't care enough to do the bare minimum. So beyond that, they'll ask you challenging questions like, hey, I'm not just going to step away from the abundance that I have in my life because I'm not desperate and I already have good opportunities. I'm going to ask you challenging questions about like, all right, so like, what is the future of the sales team? Why is the commission structure like this, et cetera, et cetera. They respect and value their own time. We already went through that. And let's see, biggest green flag is in the comments. Yes, this is the Praxis mindset. The guy that I hired, without ever going through Praxis, the first thing he did for me is he reached out directly to me on LinkedIn and he pitched himself on me. And he immediately followed that conversation up with like a cadence of emails that he wrote for Toggle specifically. And I was like, okay, yeah, you didn't go through the normal process, but I'm going to give you a shot because you clearly communicated a strong interest in the role. And then you followed that up by showing me that you have the ability to sell. So he sold himself on me through every single step of the process. He nailed the demos. He nailed everything. He was proactive in communicating. And that just was the green series of flags that I needed to know that it's going to be a good decision. So quick recap, research heavily before the first conversation, over communicate, nail the company pitch on the interview, have options, don't be desperate, and create value all along the way. Boom, that's it. End of rant. We are going to open it up for all kinds of sales related challenges and questions. Thank you guys.
Do you mind if I ask a question about, because the first thing that comes to mind when you say that they come like unprepared or not researching is like, oh, maybe they come from a super transactional sales cycle. Do you see that that's like oftentimes the case? Because if it was only a few $100s or like a very like low value deal, I could see that being a part of my process if I'm just like, I need to churn through, X number of people a day. Is that a common thing, or do you find it's like across all backgrounds?
I haven't done like specific research into whether or not these people are coming from transactional backgrounds if they fail. What I suspect though is that it's an open mix of all backgrounds. And the reality is just most people don't bother preparing for the interview. That's what I suspect.
Because nobody's ever been taught that they need to prepare.
Yeah, but like, why don't people just think of that?
It amazes me because that's always been my thought. Like, why are you going to go to a company you don't know anything about? Be like, yeah, hire me.
I can tell when someone is just like, oh, I'm looking for remote work, so I'll just apply to every company that says it's remote. They show up and they're like, so what questions do you have? They're just so boring and average. Anyway, we can move on.
The only way that you can get past that, there's literally, in my experience, there's only one way that you can get past not knowing anything.
How's that?
Is just by having charisma, right? Like if you can build a relationship really quickly, then it almost doesn't even matter that you don't have any background, that you haven't done research. It's like you're pulling that research as you're just conversing and just spitting it back. Which is like my whole thing. You just build relationships really quickly. Now, I will say, doing your research is the best way.
Yeah, true.
It's really not fun to just go into something, off. I can't even think of the phrase right now because I'm brain farting too. But all like off the cuff, it's not fun. But you can bypass that because you can separate yourself. So not only are most people average, but people are boring. And so if you're not boring, then you have even just that one thing above everybody else that has no more knowledge than you do any more than they do. But if you go in with the intention, like quite clearly that you are present in this conversation and that you actually do care, it accounts for something. It does.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Because half the jobs that I ever got out of high school were like, I was not qualified for them. I just got them because I'm charismatic. Sorry, go ahead, Marcus.
Oh no, I was gonna say I can't play the charisma card because I'm a little slime goblin and nobody wants to talk to me. So I have to thoroughly research if I want to get them to open up on a cold call or something. One thing that I've had a lot of success with is I'll often find like one little personal anecdote and then kind of tailor the email around it. Like for instance, there was one that I was writing today where the dude used to run like a contracting company that does, I mean, you guys know what that is. But anyway, I was kind of comparing Gong to being like, hey, if you explain to someone how to swing a hammer, they're not going to not hit their thumb, or they're not going to not bend the nail because you explained how, and then kind of tied how that was to Gong, and then how Gong is like that experience that they get. Anyway, it sounded a lot more fluid when I was writing it. But the thing that I do is if they read it or if they don't, it doesn't really matter. Because if they read it on the call and I know that it's gotten like 6 opens because they forwarded it along, I can be like, hey, probably didn't get a chance to read my email. I sent you the thing about hammer in your thumb, and they'll cut you off and go, oh yeah, no, I read it. And then bam, you have the social capital to like keep moving forward. But even if they don't, be like, hey, I saw you used to do this and wrote an email around it. even if they didn't read it, it just buys you that capital to pitch, and they'll let you do it.
Yeah, I love that. And just for like 1 ounce of context, so Gong does like cold call conversational intelligence. So the analogy is kind of like really powerful. It's like, just because you know how to swing a hammer doesn't mean you're not going to hit your thumb. Just because you tell a rep how to have a successful cold call doesn't mean that he'll like integrate the knowledge. So that's that like super deep personal connection that you're making with something that he actually cares about because it's his life. And like everyone is the most important thing to themselves. So you just rely on that like default psychological principle when you're doing that outreach, which is why they respond so darn positively.
Oh yeah, they go bananas.
They go bananas. Yeah. Well, cool. So we're 15 minutes in. I'd love to open up the floor that anyone is having any kind of sales related challenge or has a sales related question, how they can improve. Let's chat.
Yeah, do you guys mind if I jump in quick? Because I'm going to have to probably jump off slightly early.
Yeah, go for it, Silas.
Yeah, so just a little bit of background. I just took a new job in New York, so I started on Tuesday. Moved out here on Monday. Pretty great.
Congrats.
But it's as a recruiter, so there's a bit of cold calling, not a whole lot, and it's not really like it's not like selling. It's mainly being a consultant, and I think that I'm partially answering my question. But I guess I haven't really had to do cold calls in this way a bit, and for a while, and I've had this nervousness about picking up the phone and doing this stuff. But ultimately, as I've done a couple, I've kind of realized like there's no reason to be nervous. And I think that comes down to like I'm being nervous because I don't want to do it incorrectly because I want to excel in front of my boss because he's right there listening. So could you guys just like offer some of your experience in that same area or like just some things to remember or ways that I can get over that in a faster manner than I would naturally do?
Yeah,
go for it.
I was going to say research the hell out of them and know exactly what you're going to say. Because if you want to feel confident on a cold call, like going in and being like, I don't know what's going to happen is really scary. But if you go in and you're like, I know exactly what I'm going to say. I know that what I'm saying is going to impress them and it's going to blow them away. And also do the same thing every time, like not word for word, but like have a similar format that you're really comfortable with and figure out like what the top 5 objections are and just have like a canned thing that you're ready to throw back out there. Like, like mirror them, throw your little canned thing out there, ask an intelligent question. It's like, I think there's a few things that as long as you're doing them really well, your cold calls will be really good and you'll have a lot of confidence.
So I do get that. The one thing is that on the flip side of it, part of making my boss happy is not really doing all that research because what I'm calling, the people I'm calling are candidates for jobs, okay? So I've researched them enough to know that they have the skills necessary to do the role, or at least from what I can see on their LinkedIn. And it's not so much like I don't even have time to. Like if I were to spend time researching them and kind of figuring out something, it would result in me getting like, hey, don't do that. It's a waste of time, which ultimately I do think it is. But I mean, I just wanted to clarify that.
Okay. Makes sense. In that case, I would just stick to and anybody else is free to chime in as well, but I would just stick to the know exactly what you're going to say part if the research isn't relevant.
Yeah, that has very helped. That helped a lot. So what I did today actually was I did essentially write a script. It wasn't really a script, but it was what my boss said is use the call structure, right? Use a certain structure, and I wrote that up. And then I basically filled in, other than just the points, I filled in some of the words to say, which has helped a lot because like I said, or like you mentioned, it's very, that's the biggest part of it is the fact that you don't know what you're going to say.
Yeah, my first thought. Oh, sorry, ahead. Logan. Nah, you go ahead. I'll go last, actually. Go for it, man.
I was going to ask, Silas, have you recorded yourself making any of these calls yet?
I have not. Praise the Lord.
Well, I think that's, I don't know if you have any software that would record it for you, but if not, you can just record your phone and have it play back to you afterwards. I think that would be one of the best ways, even if you're not on a live call, just to sit at home and practice running through that script and then really tracking while you get more confident with it, your pacing and how confident you sound. I think that's where you can start making the difference in the calls, even if you're saying the same words over and over again. But yeah, it sucks to hear yourself in the beginning because it's really awkward and cringy, but it helps a lot because the best way to learn something is to feel embarrassed about the current state you operate at.
Yeah, that makes sense. I know Nick had something to say. Before I say something else, I want to hear what Nick had to say first.
No, I'm going to pass it over to Ben actually, and then I'll go last.
Yeah, I was just going to say, be able to answer any questions about your company, know all of that information. So you, like, when they say, why should I go with you if I can just go find these jobs, have all of that sort of like company and service information ready and at the tip of your fingers. And that's probably one of the biggest things, because then you're not like, oh my gosh, what I'm going to say if they ask this. You have all of that. And that kind of, at least for me, when I started doing like cold calling and stuff like that, that kind of gave me some false sense of confidence and be like, well, I know all this, so if they ask this, I'm going to be prepared.
Yeah, that makes sense. And obviously that's part of the reason I'm nervous is because it's like day 3 on the job today. And I have so much information to take in from a completely new industry that's part of why I'm nervous. So I'm sure I'll spend more time researching that, but I'll get to that point eventually. So thanks for that.
Yeah. And I would say that, like, psychologically speaking, you're on day 3, dude. Like, don't worry about anything that's going to happen in the course of like the next 2 months. Your whole mindset and objective should just be learning how to fail as quickly and gracefully as possible. So when I first started cold calling, I had to make hundreds and hundreds of calls before, like, and 2 or 3 months into the role in my first job is when I finally started like ramping up and feeling completely confident in what I was saying. And then in retrospect, a year passed from that. What I was doing at like 2 or 3 months was terrible. But it was when I finally started being able to just like barely get past the initial objections, maybe secure a few appointments, maybe get a couple of leads. So the whole thing is like, just go into it with like an experimental scientist mindset of just like, I'm going to try saying exactly this for the next 100 calls. Let's see how many people I can convert. Okay, that didn't work out, probably because I'm bad. Let me try changing a variable. Okay, this new pitch actually like converted twice as many people. This is interesting. I'm going to stick to this because it feels a little bit more comfortable. Oh, I learned a few new objections. Oh, now I'm writing down my objections. Oh, now I'm like reviewing my cold calls. And over the course of like the first couple of months, you're learning more about the industry. You're learning more about how to have these conversations with people who have had decision-making capability in the past, who are good fits for the roles you're recruiting for. Basically, your experience is going to be mounting slowly but surely. You're on day 3. You're nowhere close to being experienced. So your objective is to fail as quickly as possible. And the only way to do that, dude, is to just pick up the phone and start dialing. It's going to be anxiety inducing. The reason why it's anxiety inducing is you're bad at it. And you should be bad at it. If you were good at it, you'd already be making 6 figures. So every single salesperson has to go through that grindhouse of failing, getting hung up on, getting rejected hundreds of times. It's a natural process. The sooner that you can internalize that, the better off you'll be mentally.
Got it. And that's actually really along the lines of the answer I was looking forward to, psychological piece, because like, I guess I'm just a perfectionist because of kind of how I was raised. And so it's hard to accept the fact that I'm not going to be perfect at first. So I do appreciate that, that angle on it. Nick, thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. Anything else you want from us?
I mean, maybe just like if you guys have a couple main tips on starting a new job like this, right? What are the biggest things to like look out for? Because obviously as a young person, we typically make mistakes because we make assumptions. Like, is there certain things you want to like point out to me to make sure I don't make assumptions about it? Like, I do have the mindset already of going in and really testing the waters or seeing how things are done before rocking the boat. But I still know that there's some advice out there you guys could offer that would be really helpful.
What do you guys think?
Ask a lot of questions, write down your questions and the answers, and keep track of it all. That's about all I got. Are you meaning like more interpersonally within the office, or like the role itself on the like end user?
It's kind of both. For the most part, I think I'm very confident in my capabilities of understanding how people interact. Some of the things that like I'm thinking about are, I've noticed that there's a couple things that I think would really speed up my delivery of our service, like technology pieces that we could add on and things, very basic things. But I also know that like it's not appropriate to ask, hey, can we start using this on day 3? Because like I clearly have not, I have like a tiny grain of experience and exposure to the company. So like things like that where it's like, okay, if this comes up, hold off for a moment and trust the process kind of thing.
Yeah, I don't know how to respond to that specifically, but going back to your initial question, something that was helpful for me is internalizing a mindset of I don't know shit and I'm here to learn. Because by default, I think that a lot of us, particularly in the Praxis community, can tend to have big egos. And if I didn't internalize the fact that I don't know shit and everyone at the company knows like infinitely more than I do until I've been there for at least 6 months, that's when I can start like actually having a track record where my opinions can have some merit because I've actually had some success. Until I've come there, I felt like I don't have permission to really complain about shit. I don't have permission to, try to rock the boat. I'm here to learn as much as possible. And until feel like I am like deeply competent in what it is that I'm doing, and that competence is measurable with success, just keep that mindset. You know nothing. That's big.
Got it. That's really helpful. Thanks, Nick.
You got it. So cool. Let's move on to someone else. Folks, what you got?
All right. So a little background on like what I'm working on right now. I'm working with our current customers in like this segment size of like 51 to 200 employees. And pretty much like what I'm working on right now is like I have a report in Salesforce of all these customers with like less than 5 users. So I'm like working with our account management team, and pretty much like reaching out to them and trying to set up a call with an account manager. So I think right now I'm trying to figure out, because a lot of my time is spent like digging through Salesforce because a lot of our data is off, which is annoying, but there's nothing you can really do about it. So a lot of my time is spent doing that and actually just finding like valuable companies to reach out to. And then the other time is spent actually reaching out. So, I mean, I have like a cadence in SalesLoft that I've been using. And I'm trying to figure out like what the best way to reach these people. Because obviously like they're customers, they're paying for our service. So I don't want to be like too pushy, and I'm trying to find sort of like the middle ground of like what is too much and what isn't. So right now, like I have a couple like call steps. So I call them like twice. And then there's some emails thrown in there as well. So yeah, I'm just trying to figure out like the best way to reach these people. And I haven't like, it hasn't been long enough to say that like I need to switch up like the emails, because there just hasn't been enough testing to like prove that they don't work.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm just trying to figure out the best use of my time and like the best way to reach these people without like getting them pissed off because they're customers.
Yeah. I feel like I don't want to, dominate the floor or anything if anybody wants to go, but so I don't know too much about the relationships that your guys' like CSMs have with the accounts, but like the first thought that I have is hit up the CSM and ask for an intro, because oftentimes CSMs do have buddies on the inside. But like if you want to be able to hammer them but not go overboard, God, LinkedIn is your money maker. Because if someone from a tool that I was using asked to connect with me on LinkedIn and was like, hey man, curious to get your thoughts around the tool or something, I would connect with them 100%. And then especially since your vertical is SMB or commercial or whatever, 51 to 200, dude, that LinkedIn books like crazy. Once you start moving up segment, it's so much harder to use LinkedIn. You got to like send endless follow-ups, but especially for that segment, man, I would hammer them on LinkedIn. That's my first instinct.
So, like, would you just suggest like messaging them and connecting with them? Because I've been connecting with them, but I haven't been messaging them because I'm like just trying to like show them that I'm there and to like update your email. But
so when you're connecting, do you drop a note?
No, I don't.
Okay, I'd recommend dropping a note with like a basic ask. You could reference the email, be like, hey, curious to see if you got my email and if there's any interest or not. If you want to be like really basic, that'll work. Oftentimes they'll connect, but you're reaching out to account managers, right?
Well, I'm reaching out to whoever owns the PandaDoc account at their team.
Oh, boom. Okay,
Yeah.
Warm as hell. So if someone already owns the PandaDoc account, you're like, hey man, I know you own the PandaDoc account, looking to connect. It can be literally that simple. And then as soon as they connect with you, like just follow up with casual, like short messages on LinkedIn. And don't feel weird if you send them like 4 or 5 follow-ups before they reply, because sometimes it takes a while. But the other thing about LinkedIn is it's hard to get pissed off about because it's LinkedIn. It's kind of casual. It's not a huge deal. It's not like you're sending countless emails and it's like filling up their inbox, right? It's just LinkedIn.
Yeah, and on like the CSM part, so like a lot of like pretty much all the people I'm reaching out to, they don't have CSMs, or their CSMs are with our like because we have like designated CSMs for really small like user number size accounts. So they're pretty much just like, they don't really have a relationship with them. They're kind of just there for like if they run into problems.
Okay.
But like our customers that have like a lot of users, those are the ones that actually have CSMs. So I'm not really dealing with those people. That's why it's like I can't really get an intro. But once I like get to the right like once I talk to the person, like it's super easy to get them to sit down in a meeting. But it's just a matter of like getting into contact with them. I've been calling I've been calling all of them, but like a lot of them don't answer. Obviously, like a lot of them are like higher like executives, so it's kind of harder to get them on the phone.
Yeah.
But I mean, when I do, it's like they're like, "Oh, you're from PandaDoc, cool. Yeah, I'll sit on a meeting." But yeah,
Makes sense.
I'm definitely gonna try that LinkedIn method out. I just don't like know what is too much because I don't want to, ruffle anyone's feathers.
Yeah, dude. And another thing is like, if you're going the email route, you literally cannot go wrong with just an insanely personalized email around like one little detail, because it might seem stupid, but it's like people go ape shit for that. And if you reference it in the subject line, they're going to open it like half the time. Like I email sales leaders cold emails, and my open rate's like hovering around 40% and like a little over a 10% reply. And the reason is because I just find like one little anecdote and then I build the whole email around it. So if you want to give that a try, like literally just scroll through, look at if they do any volunteer work, if they had like an interesting job early in their career. If you look at where they go to college, if it was like in a smaller town, that's really easy to do is like find the best bar in that little college town and reference it because they probably went there. Just like all these little things, that's like huge for replies.
Yeah, Marcus, I kind of wanted to ask you a follow-up question on that.
Yeah.
How do you tie the personalized trait that you're using in the email with what you're reaching out to them about? Let's say it's to discover a call.
It's a case-by-case basis, and it's not always as strong as like, it's not always a perfect metaphor, but oftentimes it's not that they're like, oh, this has to be 100% on point, because they don't know exactly what Gong is, right? So they don't even know if the metaphor is imperfect. It doesn't matter. So for one of the bar things, right? If I'm reaching out, I'd be like, you know, a bar has to go, or, you know, this bar has good like X, Y, and Z. You know, like good music, good beer, good service, whatever. Similarly, on your sales team, you need to make sure that your salespeople are doing A, B, and C properly. Think of Gong as like your quality assurance to make sure that they're checking off these boxes so that you can like blah, 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 right? And even though it's like kind of a loose connection, they still love it because you reference their favorite bar from college.
I was going to say it's because it brings a personal anecdote or something they can relate to.
Yeah, I like that a lot. That's something I'm definitely going to test. So thank you for that.
For sure.
Mm-hmm. And totally in a different vein from the hyper personalized email, one thing that I have seen work, and this is just anecdotal from my own experience. This is actually an idea that I got from Casey McGough, who's another Praxis alumni. But if you send an insanely short email that has the subject line just inquiry, you make it's basically a 1 to 2 sentence tops email. Subject line is inquiry, and your email is something like, "Hi, first name. I know you are the admin of your PandaDoc account. Do you have 10 minutes to talk to Joe, whoever the account manager is, about some of the features that you're missing out on?" You will actually get something insane like a 30 to 40% open rate and a pretty decent reply rate to a very short, completely unpersonalized email. If my case working at Reliant is somewhat applicable to what you're doing. So it's not a general advisable strategy whatsoever, but it is something that you could potentially test.
I've done something similar to that, especially with like old resales and like old recycles. So people that submitted a long time ago for information and never answered, or people we sold years ago. I send an email. It's either checking in or checking in ... You know, very, very nondescript. It's just, hey, wanted to check in, see if you had any marketing needs coming up. That's it. The whole email right there. And that subject line gets people to click because they're like, who's checking in? Like, this has to be, because it seems very, very personal, but not personal. It's like, well, this has to be something I need to look at. And that gets, a pretty good response for something that's completely unpersonal and super easy to do.
Yeah, I feel like to the point of Nick, it depends on who you're selling to. Because like I sell to sales leaders, and there's nobody more snooty about your messaging than someone who writes messaging all day.
0% chance, yeah.
but yeah,
I guess it works well on marketing teams because that's mostly what I work with.
Gotcha.
And I do work with a lot of like for smaller businesses, like CEOs and stuff like that. And it seems to catch their attention a lot of the time. And they grab it and they don't really say much. I definitely can see what you mean though about like sales managers that are like very picky.
Yeah, like my thing is I'm emailing VPs of sales at like mid-market companies.
Yeah, they probably wouldn't appreciate that.
Dude, they literally get like 100+ emails a day.
Man. So yeah, Corey, do you feel like you have a little bit of ammo?
Yeah, for sure. I like debated doing that, but again, like I was struggling with like what is too much, because like they're already paying for us and like I want them to pay more, but without telling them that. So
have you ever like thought of maybe just sending an email? The subject line is, "I want you to pay more." And then the body of the email is something like, "Bob, you freaking loser. I can't believe you're on the starter plan instead of premium. That's a very beta move. When you have a sec, let's put 10 minutes on the calendar to fix your shit."
No.
And then you sign an alpha mail.
Yeah.
Yeah, like my
How is that effective?
And just send them an invoice too for the premium while you're at it. Just
fuck it.
Just send them the contract.
Oh my god.
They don't even like, because like my ask is like, would you be open to like a quick 15-minute call to see how we can improve your workflow? So that's like the ask, of course, with like, does like Monday or Tuesday work or something like that. But
I like Nick's better.
So
one thing.
Just send them the calendar invite.
cut
Hold
you
on,
off
let's
again.
change this. Just send the calendar invite itself for the call.
That's a terrible idea.
Dude, we had a I'm not gonna say it. We had a change of leadership when Nick and I worked together, and that was one of the things that he wanted us to start doing.
That's
was
true,
just
I forgot
sending
about that.
calendar invites out completely cold. No context.
What kind of response rate would that receive?
Oh, garbage.
Like the most I do is I'll send like my Calendly link to people like, hey, if you want to schedule something, here it is. I'm not going to go, I put us in for 9 to 9:30 Central Time. Hope it works.
Yeah.
You don't know until you test.
It's true.
Maybe with existing customers, it'll work better. I don't know.
Logan, were you going to say something else earlier?
I forgot, but I do have a question.
Sure.
It's Corey, we answered your question fully. So I'll try to keep it really simple. So basically, just like many other sales companies or sales funnels, whatever, I have a sales engineer and I have myself on a sales call with a customer. And oftentimes the sales engineer who is handling the technical portion of the call will get way too far in detail on a subject that the customer really isn't interested in. But I found it's difficult to interrupt them and get the call on track without really interrupting the flow in kind of a rude way with the engineer. So I'm curious if there's any like secrets to casually getting a call right back on the right track.
Yeah, I think that boils down to tone. So what you're going to have to do is interrupt, period. Because left to his own devices, he's just going to continue speaking, right? So it's something like, Bill, sorry to interject, but a question just popped to my mind. So prospect, you mentioned this earlier. Boom, you've got it. It's something very simple but very direct like that, where you're just like apologizing for interrupting. Hey, Steve, so sorry. So this just popped into my head. Mr. Prospect, when it comes to the load balancing Avi network and blah, 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 you just cut them off. You just kind of have to.
Yeah. Okay. I could see that where, I mean, because for the most part, what I've done is I'll say like, and real quick, is this interesting to you guys? And that usually doesn't get the response I'm looking for.
No.
It's just not something I've had to do very much because I wasn't taking calls that went into that much detail previously. Like I was just handling all those calls myself. So now I kind of have to be the quarterback a little bit on these demos and make sure that the engineer isn't just talking about every single little detail, because the customer doesn't give a shit about the micro details of GSLB or whatever. So I think it's probably just going to come back to tone and being apologetic about that kind of thing.
Yeah, and always take charge of recentering the conversation. So you don't ask the customer, is this interesting? Or like, do you want to hear about something else? Because that's just going to make the sales engineer kind of feel bad if they say no.
Mm-hmm.
So the way that you mitigate that is you apologize, you take ownership over it. You say, something came to mind. That kind of takes the onus off of the sales engineer completely. And then you ask either a qualifying question or something like that to the customer themselves about something you suspect they're more interested in.
Yeah. Okay. That, I see what you're saying. That helps.
Totally.
Thank you.
I've got a question. How much is too much? Because like going kind of back to Corey's thing, I'm reaching out to people cold, but sometimes I go fucking nuts on people. Like I like if you give me anything, I will like call you and email you every day for like a month until I get like a concrete yes or no. And there's some people that eventually I just give up on, but like there was one guy who got back to me today and it was by email and he was like, dude, you're was just way overboard. You called me like every day for the last 2 weeks. I'm not interested. But how do you decide when it's like, okay, this is too much, I need to stop following up with this person because they're just blowing me off?
One of our SDRs, he's an AE now. I remember he would just email this person every day and call them every day for like 6 months, and they got back to him and said, they were like, my colleague just told me about Panadoc, I guess I should talk to you. That's all he said. And then
Nice.
they ended up setting a demo with him, and he was
Solid.
working on this account for like 6 months. So I mean, I don't really know the answer to that.
Yeah.
I've got an idea. I think there can't be too much as long as you set the expectations up front. So if you send an email and say like, I'm going to be reaching out to you the next few days unless I hear back, then that's on them if they don't get back to you, because you told them, here's what I'm going to do. And if you, the same thing with a voicemail, like, I'll call you tomorrow if I don't hear back, but wanted to leave you a message and say, this is what I want to talk to you about. And then set the expectation as well. Just like, all I'm looking for is whether or not you're interested in this. An email that's worked well for me is I'll say like, since I haven't heard back yet, and I want to take the hint, can you tell me if this is A, B, or C? And like the option is like, I'm interested, I'll get back to you as soon as possible. I'm busy right now. Can I call you next month or whatever? And then C, I'm not interested, please leave me alone. Yeah. And then it's just like that way they can just send back really easily with the response. They're really unresponsive. But from my experience, it's all about setting expectations, because if you tell them specifically what you're going to do and then they get angry about it, that's not your fault.
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
I'll tell people a lot of time. Oh, sorry, Nick, go ahead.
I was going to say I have nothing to add, and I was going to ask if that answered your question. So Ben, go ahead.
I was going to say I follow a pretty similar thing. I'll tell people on voicemails, hey, since you were interested, I have to keep following up until I hear something from you. If you want me to like stop reaching out because I don't want to be a bother, just let me know and I'll stop. But until then, I'm going to keep calling. I'm going to keep reaching out. And that'll get the people that are not interested like, okay, this needs to stop. I'm going to call you. Or the people that are interested be like, okay, I'm good for now, but reach out in a month. But that garners a pretty good response rate of just, hey, this is going to keep happening.
Yeah.
But more specifically, I'd say it's, if you call more than once a day, then that's too much. One a day is fine.
Oh yeah, 110%. You're like, the cadence has to be there. You can't be calling them 6 times a day being like, this is going to keep happening. Now you're just borderline harassment.
I don't know, man. Sales leaders are like, sometimes they love that. They're like, God, you animal. I love that you called me.
Okay,
so
I have
much.
gotten that before, but I think that's the minority, not the majority.
Yeah.
That's so funny.
The line that usually works for me to save my ass when I am really trying to hound someone is I'll say, hope you can appreciate my persistence. And then I'll get into my messaging.
Yeah.
That's
like
pretty good.
that.
I'm gonna steal that shit and teach copywriters that, put that as the beginning of their emails when they do cold outreach.
Yeah, it's solid. All right, we probably have time for at least one more.
I could tell you guys something, like one thing I'm working on and thinking about, like, so I'm, I think, going on 7 weeks in the job and everything. And like basically this whole time I've been focusing on nonprofits and everything, because those, and especially like animal shelters, because that's what tends to do best as far as doing t-shirt fundraisers and everything. But I'm like looking to kind of branch off into a new vertical and like influencers. And like, for example, it wasn't my sale, which is sad because it's going to do amazing. But I don't know if you guys ever saw that dog who like walks himself. He like holds his own leash in his mouth and it's adorable. But he just launched today and they already sold like 200 shirts in like a couple of hours. So it's amazing, you know? So I guess I'd love to hear any thoughts on that. I'm like thinking of making a Finsta and like seeing how I could get into this new thing, you know?
Wait, so do you mind? I might be out of the loop here, but what exactly is your position or
Yeah, sure. So I work at Bonfire. It's a BDR role. Basically, I just find people who could benefit from doing a t-shirt fundraising campaign. So basically, like, it's completely free for them. We set everything up for them. All they have to do is share it, which is why it's really good for like influencers and YouTubers and la da da. Just trying to figure out, I guess, how to get in there, you know?
yeah.
Jayla, if you had to refine that into a specific question, what would it be?
And that's my problem. I guess maybe if you could give tips on like selling to an individual rather than an organization.
Okay.
Your tips on that?
Yeah, here's where I think Marcus Miller's perspective applies tenfold. If you're going to reach out to a person, you want to do hyper-specific, very targeted personal outreach, which requires very personal research. So if you're reaching out to an influencer in particular, their DMs are getting blown up. Everyone wants to work with them. Everyone wants to sell them things and sell them on selling their things. That's a very common, problem.
Yeah, for sure.
So you have to stand out. So how do you stand out? Well, you do the things that Marcus mentioned earlier. You research the heck out of, the things they've been involved with in the past, where they grew up. You make an intelligent pathway from your specific research into what you're asking for. And you might even find something like, hey, I know that you've worked with this other company to sell for XYZ or sell t-shirts for XYZ. And I also know that you love dogs. Well, here's something that we recently did, and we'd love to partner with you to do the same thing. Stuff like that.
Cool. So making like those connections.
Yeah. Well, making very specific research and then tying it into your ask.
So now I'm confused. So you're trying to find influencers that are interested in selling dog t-shirts, and then if right. And
Hold on. So
yeah.
To explain it a little bit better, right? It's super open, so I guess that's a little bit why I guess where there was a little confusion. So let's say, Marcus, you're an influencer, you're on YouTube, you're like hot shit, and you got tons of followers. I'd reach out to you, and you could make whatever t-shirt you want and just share with your followers and make some money off of that,
Okay.
So it was really broad and just whatever a person wants to do.
What?
So if Nick has an animal shelter, I can ask him okay, you want to raise some money for your puppy or whatever,
So what, who's like your ideal customer? Is it like the person with 2 million followers, or do you find, because I'm sure that would be a lot of money and all, but they're probably getting blown up? Or is it the person with 15,000 followers who's not as popular, but they could still sell some shirts and you can have a lot more of them?
Yeah, I think it's really the nonprofit, the animal shelter more so, but it's it'd be silly to not branch off into the influencer space, which is why I've been thinking about that lately.
Okay. So I sorry, I was just asking because I don't really know too much about that space. I'm sure there's some principles that carry over into any outreach from one human to another. But when it comes to reaching out to a specific influencer, I honestly don't know too much about that.
Okay. Yeah, well, no problem. Definitely what you were saying earlier, I feel definitely applies. And that's something I've been trying to do with the animal shelters too, because just try not to get those, get too generic feeling kind of thing, So I've been more oh, I saw that Louis got adopted. So happy for you guys. We help people raise money so you can keep doing what you guys are doing. Let's go.
Mm-hmm. One thought that comes to mind for me, if you're thinking about reaching out to influencers, do you get paid a commission based on the amount of volume? Is that what's beneficial for the business, assumably?
basically.
Yeah. Okay. So someone with 1 million subscribers has, guess what, 10 times the influence and reach as someone with 100,000 subscribers. So I would do a test. I would look up a database or something that has like the top YouTubers. There's literally thousands of people at this point that have more than 100K subscribers. So I would pick 20 people kind of randomly, I don't know, based on if they have 1 million. And I would pick 20 people that are just over 100,000. And I would run them through a couple of cadences where I would do very personal outreach to them. For all of them, I would spend at least 20 minutes consuming their content. So this will take some time. But if you wanted to shorten it, just like skim 5 minutes through everyone's stuff. That will help you kind of make it a quicker test if this is something you want to get done in like less than a month. And then run them through that cadence and see how many of them agree, first of all, based on the messaging to like give you a shot. And then see how much revenue comes from those who do give you a shot. What I think you'll find is that it takes just as much effort to book an influencer with 1 million subscribers as it takes for 100,000. The only difference will be the level of personalization that's required to get their attention. You might also have to follow up more. So expect to follow up actually quite a lot. But that's for like both cases. So give that a shot.
Cool.
Do you have any like kind of cadencing software?
What is cadencing?
Or something that helps you send like automated follow-ups?
Oh yeah, HubSpot.
Oh, okay. Okay. Gotcha.
Cool. Well, definitely thank you guys for your insights.
Right on. All right, well, we're coming pretty close here to the end. Anyone got one last thing?
Yeah, just to sort of follow up on what I would say the main topic of today's call was personalized email outreach. How do you guys do research on leads that you have? Like, take me through the process of how you guys basically do online research and try to learn as much as you can about them. Like, what do you look at? What are you looking for? Just tips in general on customer research would be really helpful.
Yeah, I'll jump in here. So on the account level, what I look for is a few key things every time that are all kind of relevant to what I'm selling. So I'll look if there's been growth on the sales team. That's the first thing I always check for, and then I mark how much there's been. LinkedIn Sales Nav like gives you a percentage of that, or it gives you like what percentage growth or decline there's been. I look if they have any open careers, and then I kind of might look at like what they are and look at the job description maybe to see if it's like an account where I'm not sure if they have a compatible sales process. Oftentimes if they're hiring AEs, it'll kind of explain if they're inside sales, if they're field, or if whether or not they can be used. And then I'll look to see what the structure of their sales team looks like, because I want to know, like, again, compatible sales process. And then that'll also give you an interesting question to ask if they're like, oh, this isn't relevant. Be like, oh, okay, well, I saw that you had a lot of SDRs and AEs, and typically we work with companies like X, Y, and Z that have that similar go-to-market, so blah, blah, blah. And then also I'll note a few other customers that are either competitors, similar go-to-market, people that are in or shared investors or something. And then I'll make a quick note of like what the company does. And then once I have those things on the company level, I'll also go look through Gong, and I'll make sure that we haven't had a conversation with them in the past, or if we have, what they were looking to solve and why, and what the stopper was. And then another thing that I need to start doing more is looking through our entire list of customers. You can put into Sales Navigator, like, hey, people that were at one of these companies, and then just scroll through the company and see if you have anybody that used to work at a current customer, or if there's like a team link intro, so you can hit up somebody at your team. That might not be as relevant. I don't know how big the company you're at is. And then on the personal level, the only thing I look for is like one anecdote that I can just like latch onto. So like if they're a drummer, they're a bowler, they played college sports, or they coach little league, there's like a lot of like commonalities that you'll see coming up. And then I'll have that. And then once you get all that stuff, I just have the notes and outreach, and then just reference the email and go to town.
Awesome. I love the defined trait. Just find something that you can somewhat tie what you're selling into. I think that's really valuable.
Yeah, definitely. So here's a little trick I used to use at the last company I worked for. So I always wanted to know what type of storage technology people had in their data center. And it turned out I discovered that a lot of storage engineers would actually mention that on their LinkedIn profiles. So there's a technique that you can use to use Google as a search engine to scan through LinkedIn and find specific keywords on people's LinkedIn profiles. And if there's a large enough company that you're talking to, it becomes more and more likely that A, there's not just one guy that's doing it, there's like 10 guys that are doing it, whatever you're selling. And then B, that one of those 10 guys will have that keyword that you're looking for that you can drop. You can name drop that in a call. So I'll put it in the chat, but basically it's just using a parameter that restricts Google search to just the LinkedIn website and specifically LinkedIn profiles. You put the company name in quotes, and then you type in a list of keywords that you want Google to try and search for. So you can use Google as a search engine to scan for those specific keywords. Just a quick example, if I am going to talk to like some large insurance company, before I go onto that call, I'm doing that whole search and I'm just trying to find LinkedIn profiles that mention SAN storage. And then when I'm on their LinkedIn profile, it usually says, upgraded the VNX 5300 SAN storage environment to all new EMC vBlock. And it's like, oh, wow, I learned something about their data center. I can intelligently name drop that in the call and I'm more prepared. So that's like a more kind of like advanced hack that you can use if you know keywords that you want to know ahead of the call.
Absolutely, that's really powerful. Do you have, is it like a Chrome extension, or do you have like a link to access to that?
I'm just going to drop it in the chat for now. I can
no
write a
worries.
blog
I can
post
do my
on
own
this
research
sometime.
on that.
Okay, yeah, no worries.
Awesome, thank you. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Anyone else? All right, we will end on lethal silence. Kidding. This was a really awesome call. Super high quality questions, super high quality responses. I'm going to go ahead and stop recording, and everyone is free to hang out for the social.